We've said before that one of the primary reasons that many of the Brexiteers went to really push to leave the EU, and why there were, again, a lot of Conservatives who were very pro-Remain, came down to the fact and essentially their feelings over regulation. And this was regulations over everything, to animal welfare standards, workers' rights, food standards, regulation on financial industries. You can name it, and you can almost guarantee that if they were for those, they were Remainers. If they were against those, they were Brexiteers. And predominantly, those who are against, who are the Brexiteers, who we've called before the free market fundamentalists, are obsessed with this idea that somehow, if you let the market run wild, everything will be fine, regardless of the chaos that it will cause and the job losses it will lead to. That's all fine. Of course, it's not. You need regulations in your country, first of all, to help protect workers and consumer standards, but also to help regulate those industries so that they don't go doing ridiculous things like we saw in America with the housing industry crash and the financial crash over there. That was caused by essential lack of regulations. There's so many other examples of that happening, of chemical spills happening because the right regulations weren't in place or they were ignored. You look up examples time after time online of, if regulations didn't exist for this, then this huge thing wouldn't have happened, or this gets caught here because of regulations. Regulations are important. Like it or not, we need them. And especially in a country like the UK, where big multi-internationals exist and people with a whole lot of money who essentially can save an extra couple of £1,000,000 just for essentially cutting corners, which could lead to huge disasters down the road, not only environmentally, but even to damaging consumers, is huge. And the fact that we have these people in charge is madness. I mean, you've got a clear example of just a few months ago, we saw the business secretary on looking to essentially get rid of things like the Working Time Directive and other workers' rights, which we got from the EU. Now, luckily, that looked to have been staved off, but they said that they would put this into law. Well, unfortunately, the last Queen's speech did not include anything like that, and that, once again, should be ringing huge alarm bells for so many people who want to help protect workers' rights. So, before we jump into today's article on just this, please do remember to hit that like, share and subscribe button, and also down below there is a link to my Patreon page, as well as a one-off donation link called Buy Me a Coffee, where you can, buy me a coffee. And as always, thank you very much to those people who do support me that way. So, this comes from The Guardian, and the title is, Regulations Are Too Good for Boris Johnson and His Team of Brexit Fantasists. It turns out that throughout the Brexit discussions with the British government, the EU's chief negotiator, Michel Barnier, was keeping a diary. That he managed to do this at the end of the days of usually frustrating talks says something for Barnier's staying power. And, to judge from the speculation about the next French presidential election, he intends to stay around for some time. His diary has been published in France, and surprise to surprise, with one or two exceptions, the British side does not even come out too well of what our football commentators would call the French reflections. From the moment of our first secretary for Brexit, our old friend David Davis turned up in Brussels armed with a few pieces of paper and faced Barnier's heavily prepared team carrying volumes of material, the die was cast. The EU had the upper hand, and for all we know, Davis's negotiating paper could have been a copy of the Times crossword. That it had been abundantly clear ever since that, unlike Chelsea and Man City, that the British team representing Theresa May and then the one Boris Johnson were never in the Champions League. As for Lord Frost, I think he ranks way below my team, the AFC Wimbledon. Brexit done like hell it's been done. Brexit is unravelling all over the place. British fishing crews are told at Calais that they can keep their fish over which they have regained control as the blockades go up. Commentators are saying that now we have regained control, that we need more immigrants to fill the gaps in our labour force of the construction and hospitality sectors. And the fact that that complaints about immigration were among the factors contributing to the Brexit vote is neither here nor there. The Cummings, Johnson and Gove campaign was always a complete nonsense. But alas, it turned out, to paraphrase Abraham Lincoln, that you can fool some people some of the time. And zealots who are fooled far too many of the people did not even understand the consequences of their great victory. While our electoral representatives fool around the negotiating trade deals that are but a pale shadow of what we are used to enjoy in the EU, our exports to the continent have taken a dive, and the normal flow of imports continues to be seriously disrupted. The bureaucracy of Brussels was largely a myth, and now we do have bureaucratic delays to normal business as a direct consequence of Brexit. And talking of bureaucratic delays, this brings me to another look on our relations with the rest of Europe. By the London-based French journalist Tristan de Bourbon-Palmer. Like Philip Stallman's In Britain Alone, which I recommended recently, the author covers the UK relations with our neighbours since 1945, culminating or reaching its zenith in Brexit. However, to please his publishers, Bourbon de Barbe had to get our dreaded Prime Minister into his title, Boris Johnson's Un European Contraire. The English version is Boris Johnson, a frustrated European. The author's view that Johnson is a cultural European but can't stand the EU. By the way, they can be forgiven for not standing him. Which brings us to yet another triumph of a time-wasting bureaucracy of Brexit. Whereas Barnier's book was almost certainly presents a practical view of the Brexit negotiations, de Bourbon has conducted extensive interviews with both sides. We cannot yet read it, yet the consignment sent to the UK has been held up at the Customs and Excise for the past 3 months. That's taking control of you. The obvious area of interest for de Bourbon fans is the debacle over Northern Ireland. He believes the fundamental error was for negotiators to concern too much on the concerns of the Republicans and not enough on those of the Unionists. The resulting chaos is far from being resolved. But, as the EU's ambassador to the UK, Joe Val D'Almeida, has pointed out, the fundamental problem is that not much is being discussed about the protocol, but Brexit itself. In lining his way through the Northern Ireland deal, Johnson should have paid far more attention to Sir Walter Scott's great line, "Oh, what a tangled web we weave when we first practice to deceive." Which brings me to the famous dictum from another Scottish author. Amid the speculation of another independence referendum, I whether in the hearts of hearts, Nicola Sturgeon and her colleagues really worry about the words of Robert Louis Stevenson. In the situation that the UK is suffering economic harm from Brexit, Scotland appears is a lot more European than England. And as the Institute for Financial Studies pointed out, by leaving the UK to rejoin the EU, Scotland would also suffer economic harm. This is the case, as where Stevenson wrote, to travel hopefully is to be a better thing to arrive. And yeah, once again, we are exactly where we are pre-2016 levels of, we now have a group of hardcore Brexit free market fundamentalists who are obsessed with the idea of getting rid of regulations. They are desperate to try and do trade deals like we're seeing with Australia and New Zealand, which are going to add 0.01% to our GDP. Again, that's nothing. We've had, and not only that, but will destroy our agricultural industry. We've seen preparing negotiations to go talk with the Latin America bloc, which, by the way, is based on the EU, another very powerful, influential bloc. Again, those negotiations aren't going to go well. And remember, if we've offered zero tariff access to things like New Zealand and Australia for agricultural products, then that probably means we're also going to have to offer them to the US and Brazil as well, which will be a huge, huge impact to all areas of the British economy. As we've said before, Brexit is not going to end well. It is based on a complete fantasy of the idea that if we move over there, somehow we'll be fine. Again, Brexit was sold as this fantasy option with all these wonders that have yet to actually materialise and will never materialise because, as what was said there, oh, what a web we weave when we first practice to deceive. And Boris Johnson has woven himself an absolute web of deceit. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share and subscribe button on your way out. And of course, down below there is a link to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link as well. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.